Welcome to the Ultimate Sacrifice Show, where combat veterans and Gold Star families have a voice. Welcome to the next episode of the Ultimate Sacrifice Show. So today we have an extremely special show and an awesome lineup with Roice and Jim McCollum. Jim is the father, Roice is the sister of Riley McCollum, who was one of the Marines that was tragically killed at the Abbey Gate during the drawdown of Afghanistan at Kabul Airfield. Jim, Roice, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. So this show is going to be jam-packed with just about everything that we can possibly cover. I know that we spoke offline, and when we originally finally got a hold of you, I was super excited, and Colin called me. He was like, we're getting on the phone with them, and I was pumped. I mean, all we wanted to do was get in contact with you, both of you specifically, and then eventually the rest of the families. But this was the catalyst, like I told you before, to starting the foundation. Literally the catalyst. Without this specific incident, I don't know. I mean, we would have probably just went about our normal lives, but this was such a, on our end, it was such an overwhelming shot of anger and anxiety and sadness and rage. You know, just like I said when I went on Fox, I wasn't lying. That's how it was. I remember being up on my couch for like 5 nights. I felt like a maniac. I just couldn't sleep because of this. So, you know, I am just a heartfelt, huge thank you for coming on. And before we move on, I just want to kind of highlight both of you and just introduce yourselves to the world. Go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
I am Roice McCollum, and I am Riley McCollum's older sister. Yeah. I'm a health and life coach, and I don't know. That was a terrible introduction.
It's all good. That's what the show's about. Just having fun.
And I'm Jim McCollum, Riley's dad. I'm a log home builder, timber craftsman by trade, cowboy carpenter, poet. Happy to be joining you. This story needs to be shared. People need to hear it. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely my pleasure. And it's all of our pleasures. You know, everyone from this foundation was super pumped when they heard that you guys were coming on, and they're eager to meet you. And everyone has the same mindset as far as what's enveloped around, you know, the start of this foundation, but where we want to take it to. How can we make an impact? And this is obviously one small piece of the pie, but this is extremely important. This show needs to be spread worldwide, and you know, a lot of things. We're going to touch on a lot of topics. Like I said, one of them is going to be, you know, Dover Airfield, and you know, what happened when you guys met with Biden and all of that, because it's important, and it's important to hear in real, true, and raw fashion. You know, with that said, I know everyone's dying for us to get right down and dirty. So let's talk about the Afghan drawdown and, you know, the Abbey Gate incident. Like I said, you know, I remember my wife walking into the room after it was the 4th-ish, maybe 3rd or 4th night, where I was wide awake all night. I mean, it was the worst I've ever looked, I've ever been. I remember watching the news, and, you know, I saw the caskets getting carried off, and that was the point where, you know, everything kind of sunk in and it got real. And I know for, you know, myself being a leader, and I very well could have been in charge of Riley at the time, and very well could have been all of us, our platoon, our squad, our team down there. I think it kind of sunk in from 20 plus years of fighting in Afghanistan, and seeing this happen, and seeing this be the, you know, the second, third, so on and so forth order of effects of us being there. It hurt. It sucked. And I can't imagine how it felt for you and what you went through. But I want you to highlight the story. I want it to be all from you. Let's get on to the drawdown Abbey Gate incident. and then we'll move on.
I still stand by that. Sure, we needed to get out of there, but if we were going to do it, we should have done it 18 years ago. To drag it out as long as we did, to change the lives the way that we did, 20-year-old women that had a whole different aspect of what life was like, and then to pull that rug out from under them that quick and in that fashion, it just doesn't sit right with me. You changed the culture. We should have left a presence. Politically, I don't care if it's right or wrong, but you can't you can't pull out that way. And then the way that the Biden administration did it was an absolute cluster. Giving up the air base, leaving the equipment, leaving the weapons, leaving, just everything they did was one fumble after another. And as I look back on it and reflect on it, there's nothing that makes sense. You cannot be that inept and that stupid. It was by design. There had to be a reason that they did what they did, and I can't figure out what that reason is, but it's all wrong. Everything they did was wrong.
Yeah, from changing leadership last minute so no one knew who was in charge, pulling out the people who actually came up with the plan and saying, good job, you go home, and now we'll throw someone who has no idea what they're doing in. Like, nothing that they did to organize the withdrawal made any sense, leaving all of our weapons. The way that the Abbey Gate was set up, which we learned and was not talked about, but the whole perimeter was supposed to be this super secure perimeter, and you can only get in from here, and they had holes in the fences, so all you had to do was have one Marine turn their back and 5 Afghans could get through who were not vetted. No one was ever checking them. You would have no idea how many people got through that weren't vetted, because once they were through, it was assumed that they were checked. So we really have no idea who came to our country, to other countries, and the whole process was just a mess. Like the bomber easily could have been 15 feet closer through that fence if he hadn't detonated at that point and he wanted to wait till he got into the airport. Like, there's so many little things that could have gone even worse than they did, because things just were not organized and set up in a way. And that's not like a bash on the people that are there, the Marines who are there, the British troops. It's not an attack on anyone there. It's the organization from the top down on how the entire withdrawal took place and the chaos that was around for all of those guys.
Yeah,
The
no,
decision to
100%.
leave Abbey Gate open, I don't fault anything. Again, the Marines that were there, the people that were at Abbey Gate, they were doing what they were told to do, what they thought was right. Riley died doing what he thought was right and what was just. Riley always wanted to do something bigger and better than him, and by damn he was. They put more people through the Abbey Gate than any other gate at the airport. To touch on what Roice said, learning more as this has gone on and having people sit in the house right here where we're at, the only thing I ask is don't lie to me. And from the first words out of their mouth, they were lying to me the whole damn time. We never got the straight story. We got drone footage that's so spotty. They're claiming there was no gunfire. We've got video, and I've got conversation with Marines. It was constant gunfire. It was an absolute chaotic mess that those kids were put in. And they did the best they could. They did what they could. They knew that he was coming. There's been reports, and the official report said they had no idea that the bomber was coming. There was a bolo that morning. Be on the lookout. 3. They knew what he looked like, what he was wearing, his backpack. But it was such a chaotic mess, and there were so many people that there's no way you could get eyes on that particular guy.
Yeah.
And like Roy said, the security was not
what they're claiming
it was. It was just absolute chaos.
No, and we do have ISR assets. We have constant surveillance overhead, and they did as well. They damn well knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And the biggest piece of that pie is we can touch on the $85+ billion worth of munitions we left a bunch of demons. and the worst terrorist organization to ever exist on this planet, we can also touch on the fact that we negotiated with the terrorist organization and were canalized down to an airfield where Riley was at was a choke point. But I think it's more important that everyone hears it from you and everyone kind of hears the truth, because when you're on the ground, a lot of things are going on at once. And yeah, they didn't have a ton of Marines, Army members, Navy, I believe Air Force personnel were over there at the time as well. And the suicide bomber could have went anywhere. They can't control a whole airfield when there's hundreds of thousands of Afghans trying to climb the barbed wire, throwing their kids over it, to all the Marines that were on top of there. I mean, it's always going to be chaotic, and they carry out the orders as the orders are given to accomplish their mission. And that is it. That is literally it. And, what makes us sick to our stomach about this whole thing is that this little, mishap, I call it an absolute debacle. This could have been anyone. You cannot defend yourself against someone as cowardly as a suicide bomber.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to break through the masses and even get up to the choke point area was an atrocity. Moving kind of forward past the Abbey Gate, and before we move on to everything that occurred after that, I do want to just touch on Riley as a person. Now, I remember when this happened, they flashed a picture of Riley wrestling. Someone did, whether it was social media or the news, whoever did it. And I was like, oh my God, I love that kid already. And just from talking to you beforehand, he was a big wrestler, and he had a huge heart, and he was a natural born leader. I want everyone to hear more about Riley. Let's just amplify him.
Yeah, Riley was born a fighter. He was tough and he was mean, and he just had that instinct that he just needed to fight, whether it was physically wrestling, rolling around with someone, boxing, or fighting for the underdog and like looking out for people. And he just had a fighting spirit where he was always looking to, he was willing to step up to the plate and take on any battle he needed to do the right thing, the just thing, to do what he believed was the right thing and the good thing to do. And I was thinking about it earlier today, and he's such a tough kid, and we were so competitive, and we would beat the crap out of each other on a daily basis. We were always fighting and wrestling, and I broke my toes kicking him in a wrestling match. But he loved birds and cats and squirrels and small little creatures, and he was like always going for the underdog and the like helpless thing, or the thing that needed someone else to stand by. And after he died and we got messages from people he went to school with, it was always the same story of Riley helped me when I needed someone. Riley helped me when I needed a friend, or Riley was there for me when I didn't feel like I had anyone else. And Riley was always trying to find that person, that animal, that thing that needed something, and to take the fight for them, and kind of take their battle into his hands and do what he could to help people.
Things that we didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
We knew what kind of kid he was and what kind of heart he had, but we didn't know. We've heard so many stories, compassionate, where you'd look at that kid half the time and go, that kid's got no compassion whatsoever. He'll tear somebody's head off. But no, he always looking to do the right thing for the right person. Without recognition, yeah. Nobody needed to know, and he didn't care who he hurt to make sure this person was okay. He'd step on 11 toes to make sure this kid was all right. Which, learning about him, we knew he was a good kid, but then you hear the stories and you learn the heartfelt stories and how he changed people. He saved people's lives. Teenage suicide and stuff like that. Riley stepped up and became, he was a friend of the people that needed it the most. And I don't know how he knew who needed him, but he was always there for the people that needed him, which for me, that's absolutely fantastic. The wrestling piece, we got him into wrestling because he was such an aggressive, angry kid when he was little, like 3-4 years old. he was a handful. So I wrestled and I thought wrestling would be a good outlet for him. And I created a monster with it. We'd travel across the country, and he took his lumps for the first couple of years, and he was never the strongest or fastest or most athletic, but there was not a kid that would work harder than him. And all that hard work eventually paid off, and the wins started coming, and he'd medal, he'd be on the podium, and then he's winning tournaments, and then he's not
Awesome.
losing matches for 30 matches. And no, it was fun. And that was our life. Royce and Riley and I went everywhere. It was always wrestling. It wasn't a season, it was year round.
Did you guys ever come out to Jersey or PA?
We never did. We
No.
talked about it a lot, but
The
we
Florida
never
one,
did.
the,
Yeah.
Nice.
But
Nice.
yeah, it was a lifestyle, and it kind of just fit with the whole military and the Marines.
discipline, like
Yeah.
being driven
Very
and focused.
structured,
yeah.
very focused. Yep.
And he knew.
Yeah, it's funny. Go ahead, Roice.
He knew as a little kid that he wanted to be a Marine. And Riley had a really hard time listening to any authority, teachers, principals, parents. Like, he had oppositional defiant disorder, so he would defy anyone that tried to tell him what to do. Didn't matter what it was. And so wrestling was a way to kind of get him to focus in on that and to kind of train him out of that in a way, to help him learn how to take authority, take direction from authority and be the good soldier that you're supposed to be as a Marine. And he knew he wanted to do that, so it was kind of a work, I think, his whole life of like, this is what it's going to be like when you're a Marine. You're going to have to listen to people. You're not going to get to say no. And he did best when he had that big structure and discipline in his life. And so I think that wrestling really was like training for him to be a Marine his whole life. That's kind of why he did it, was with the end goal of being a tough Marine in the end.
That's
Exactly.
incredible.
Looking back on it, it's like every aspect of his life prepared him to be who he was and where he was. Looking back, the retrospective view of it, it was meant to be. It sucks, but he was where he was supposed to be at this time for whatever reason. And you can just see the pieces all fell into place exactly as they were supposed to. And he was where he needed to be and doing what he needed to do, whether it was for him, for the United States, for the people that he saved. I haven't figured that one out yet, but he was definitely where he was supposed to be.
That's great for you to say that too. And I agree wholeheartedly. We are fortunate enough to live in the greatest country on this planet. And we're also fortunate enough to live in a country where you have kids who are, 18, 19, 20, 21, raising their right hand and volunteering to serve our country, and especially at a time of war, like Riley did. But two things real fast. So it's funny about the wrestlers. I met more of a population of ex-wrestlers in the military than I've ever met. You too. I see you shaking your head. It's incredible. And number two, I know Riley he had goals in the Marine Corps, and he wanted to do certain things. And one of them was go to sniper school, become a scout sniper.
Yes.
Now I was in a scout sniper platoon, loved it. Best time I've ever had in the entire military. I don't think I touched on that with you prior to, but I do remember, it's ingrained in my head now that Riley wanted to do that. And I want you guys to touch on it. Anything else, other goals that he had that he wanted to accomplish?
When he got back, I know he wanted to be a DI. That was an exciting thing for him. You go ahead.
Yeah, he wanted to be a DI just so he could
pay back what he was given.
Yeah.
Of course.
The reasoning was horrible, but he thought that would be pretty cool. He was really excited. He wanted to come back sniper school. He was still torn between making a career out of the Marines or re-enlist and then become a history teacher and a wrestling coach. His passions, he was young, wasn't even 21 yet, so he was still trying to figure out exactly where he wanted to be, what he wanted to do. New wife, baby on the way, so he was trying to put all those pieces together as to what his life was going to look like. The Marine Corps had him, and he was committed, and he that's what he wanted. But there was that other side of him that, once I'm done with this, I want the family. I want the family life and the kid and the house. And, you know, he talked about coming back to Wyoming or going to Montana. Definitely wanted to be in the mountains. So yeah, he wasn't struggling, but he was trying to figure out where his place in the world was going to be.
When I think in just the military aspect, we had talked to him. He was originally supposed to deploy to Afghanistan October, 6 months before. And he was supposed to go dig up old bombs and kind of clear fields and just make things safer there. And when he called us, or was he in the car? When he was telling us about it, he was like, I'm going to be so pissed if I die getting hit, exploded.
If I get blown up digging up an IED, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And well, that's,
And then lo
what
and behold,
happened.
he got
But
blown up. But
his whole thing was that he wanted to go, if he was going to die, he wasn't really scared of that, but he wanted to be doing something meaningful and with a purpose. And that was the whole reason, like, his whole life was fighting and, helping someone. And so he wanted to be going down for a purpose, for something bigger than himself. And I think that's just the most important thing to him about being a Marine. And that's where he ended up. That's what he did get to do in the end.
he had the opportunity to come home because the baby was ready to be born.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to leave. He wanted to be with his unit, with those guys, and he did not want to come home. And kudos to the kid for stepping up and being the Marine that he was. He could have.
That's the behind the scenes thing that people never hear of.
Yep.
It's incredible.
And as his dad, I'm proud as hell that he made that choice. Had he made a different choice, obviously he'd be here and he would have held his baby, but for him to make that sacrifice and make that commitment and not want to leave his guys, that's huge for me.
Yeah. I think that, man, that was months and months ago now. But I think that it definitely showed, us in our foundation, but I know probably hundreds of thousands of veterans and, family members and service members. It showed us the importance of all of this. And, the true meaning behind, what it means to serve and kind of selfless service and honoring your country. And it also kind of showed us that, we have an obligation, at least I feel that we have an obligation now to not only, stay in touch, like everyone likes to say, let's stay in touch, but, truly kind of live his memory on forever. And this is just the start of what we can do for that. And there's a lot of things planned, but I truly do believe that. And I really hope and pray that, the rest of America and the rest of the veteran community sees that too, because it's very important. And a lot of the times, I know the term is new and it's kind of odd, but the Gold Star family, I mean, that's what you guys are now. And I don't want them to be forgotten, because I think a lot of times they have been, and it's time for it to stop and to cease. With that, if you guys have anything else, we can touch on it. But if not, if you want to move into Dover Airfield with President Biden and all his cabinet members, we briefly spoke on it at the beginning of the show. That was the point for me and so many where it was real. It hit us. I just wrote this blurb and I put it on Facebook, and I was really freaking hesitant to do so, because as someone in the military who was in a leadership position, who deployed multiple times to Afghanistan, kind of like Riley's leaders, I would assume it's you never want to play that card. You never want to play any type of weakness whatsoever. Your sole mission, your sole job is to bring every single man and woman that you're in charge of home to their families. So I know that they must be feeling some heavy burdens, but other than that, I remember watching the caskets come off the plane at Dover Airfield and get brought to the vans. And it just broke me, completely. But in retrospect, I look at it like, with the start of this foundation, especially us sitting here today, it's important for people who were Lance Corporals like Riley to understand that, your leadership and your seniors and peers and subordinates, they're feeling the same thing. Like, if you bottle this up, you're going to be a time bomb. So with that, I want to give you both the floor to speak on the Dover airfield, kind of from start to finish. I know you said you got the notice so quickly and you were almost en route immediately, but let's start from there.
Dad got the knock at 3, and then I think Shane got here at like 4:30, and I got here at 5.
Yeah, I've actually written a poem about that. The dogs are barking, 3 o'clock, 3:10 in the morning. And I'm yelling at the dogs, like, shut up, whatever. They wouldn't quit barking, so I knew something was up. And to backtrack just a little bit, we heard about the bombing that day.
Yeah.
And I was reassuring my daughters, no news is good news. You always hear that. No news is good news. And statistically, there's no way in hell Riley was involved. This dumbass kid from Wyoming, there's no way he was near that. And the initial reports, we heard it was Gulf Company, if I remember right. It's like, all right,
He's Gulf. It was Echo.
No, Echo Company. It wasn't Riley. He's good. So I'm trying to reassure my kids. Roice went down to Bond Ramp that night. We were getting ready to stay in our cabin, and something just told me I needed to stay home, and I'd meet her down there in the morning. Dogs barking, knock on the door, and I peeked out the window. There's no question. There's 2 Marines standing on your porch. You know exactly what happened. And it's like, shit. So open the door, let them in. They kind of gave me their scripted version of what they had to tell me. They wouldn't leave me alone. I had to wait for one of my daughters to get here before they would leave. I got a hold of Cheyenne. She's headed this way. Took me a while to get a hold of Roice, but the 2 Marines stayed until my daughters showed up. And then from there, it was an absolute blur. Our KCO officer was from Salt Lake.
It's 4.5 hours
4.5, 5 hours away. She left here, went back to Salt Lake, came back that evening, picked us up, took us to Idaho Falls so we could jump on a plane the next morning.
So it was about 16 hours of driving for her. She drove to us, drove home, turned around, came to pick us up, drove us again to another state to get on a plane.
And then we flew to Dover.
We met up with Gigi in Salt Lake.
Met Gigi in Salt Lake. That was a bittersweet reunion, but it was so nice to connect with her. You're just numb at that point. No sleep. You're trying to process and digest everything that's going on. And you're here, you're there, you're just in a fog. It's an absolute fog. Got to Dover, kind of got a layout of the itinerary, what to expect, where we're going to be, that sort of thing. The day that they returned to the United States, the next morning, Gigi had made the decision. We left it up to her whether or not we had media coverage of Riley's casket coming off the plane, and she did not want any media coverage. We stayed back while the other 11, there was us and one other family that chose not to have media coverage. The other 11 came off. We stayed back. It was about 2.5 hours later than it was supposed to take place. We had heard the resident in chief had fallen asleep and was taking a nap. I wish I would have been there in hindsight to see the other 11 come off. I really regret that I wasn't there to support them. We did get to sit with all the families.
So when
nobody
the morning
spoke.
of, they didn't have enough housing for us on the Air Force base, so we stayed at a hotel, on the base at Dover. So we stayed at a hotel outside. They brought us in the morning, and all of the families were in there, and they had people in there to talk to us and make sure we were doing okay. And that was when we were supposed to meet Biden and the other dignitaries. It was all of the families kind of sitting in these two little living areas, and I don't think anyone talked to each other or really said a word the whole time we were there.
You're all just numb. You're nobody knows what to say.
Sure.
You're all in the same position. You're hurting. And I remember the hardest thing for me, as bad as I hurt for, I just lost my son, and that's painful. But to see the other families, I hurt so bad for them, and seeing the pain that they were going through and the anguish in their face. We're tough. We can deal with it. We can take this. We can handle this. But to see the other, it just absolutely broke my heart. And then, do you want to go into the
So
train wreck?
they gave us the option the night before to meet Biden, or if there was anyone else we specifically did not really want to speak with, we had that option. So there were 3 families that chose not to speak with him.
Us included.
Gigi did want to. She wanted to see what he had to say and if there was going to be any sincerity in anything he had to say. So Cheyenne said that she would sit out there with her to make sure that she wasn't alone. So she stayed out there. Like Dad said, he was 2.5 hours late because he was taking a nap. So they were all supposed to just kind of fall in line. They had him coming in last so that the families that didn't want to meet with him could go to a separate room. So all Millie and everyone else came through, and we talked to them. We shook their hands. Most of them kind of gave a half-assed handshake and walked on to the next person. It was just, I'm going to say this 13 times and I'm going to get out of this room.
So scripted. And
then there were a couple people who were more sincere and actually stopped and cried and hugged us and had something else to say. And, it felt, you could tell that they were feeling the pain too. So they all got out, and then we waited 2.5 hours for Biden to get into the building. And so Dad and I went and sat in this room with 2 other families, and we were in there forever waiting. And so I actually left at one point to use the restroom, and I had to walk right past the couch was here, restrooms are over here, and Biden had to kind of make this loop right here. And so I happened to walk out right as he had just finished talking with Gigi.
Take your time. It's all right.
And he was sitting out there, kneeling in front of her. And in the 7-8 months he'd been in office, and really the years before that, and all of the times that he's kneeled for our flag, or the lack of respect that he's shown for our military, to see him kneeling there,
rubbing her leg. Gigi was so pissed. She couldn't get him away from her fast enough. He never once spoke Riley's name. He never mentioned Riley by name. He told her a story about his son. And absolutely she wanted to know what he was going to say. She wanted to give him the opportunity, and he absolutely crushed her. Kneeling, talking about his son, saying he knows what she's going through because he lost his son too. And then he kept touching her, and all she wanted to do was punch him to get him the hell away from her. That's how her meeting, Cheyenne, my other daughter, and Gigi, that's how the meeting went with Biden. To this day, and I'm still pissed, even at the State of the Union, he has not once mentioned my son's name. I don't believe he's mentioned the name of any of the 13. And to me, that's absolutely disgusting, disrespectful. He is not a commander-in-chief. I am so pro-military, but man, it would be hard to take orders from that guy. I struggle. The guy, respect is earned, and that man he has not earned my respect at all.
Oh. I, you know, we spoke before this. I, there's many things, many words that come to mind right now. I think my mindset about this whole thing is that I want to stay on course and just honor Riley. It's worthless for me to get on here and spew. I don't want that. And the emotion and all that's shown. It's what it's all about. It's very real. It's not scripted, like getting on one of the major news networks, and you gotta stay composed, and they're asking you a specific set of questions. None of that matters. This is what matters, and I'm very grateful for you to be able to speak out about it. We can move on. We don't have to stay on this. I know it's very touchy. Okay, so let's get on something bright.
That one goes south really fast.
Unfortunately it does. And we feel for you. So, all right, Jim, you just came out with a new book.
I did.
I saw you posted something that if you want to get it, you got to go to this site. I was on it last night. I have to purchase it. Plan on doing it today because I want that. You're a big poem writer.
Yes.
And then Roice, you are correct me if I'm wrong, you're a health coach and a life coach.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So who wants to start? Because you two have some pretty awesome stuff going on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am a health and life coach, and I'm working with people to kind of build a better relationship around food and exercise, and help people get in shape, and just live a healthier lifestyle without eating salads every day for the rest of their life. So that's what I do. I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and I just work with people for a year or so at a time, and kind of help them change their life and mindset just around health in general, and trying to make it easy and kind of fit in with their whole life instead of making it a challenging, I have to do this, I have to work out and be miserable about it. Just kind of helping them find ways to just fit it into their everyday life and make those changes.
And it's
Awesome.
kind of a fun story. How she got into this is because of Riley. Her helping Riley with wrestling and weight management and the physical aspect of things, the dietitian side of things, a better way to cut weight, a better way to maintain weight.
Yeah, so Dad wrestled his whole life and cut weight his whole life, but
the horrible way.
he would, starve himself and then binge eat McDonald's and then starve himself for a week and then binge eat again. And he did better with Riley and I, but then we were eating like grapefruit, saltine crackers, and a hard-boiled egg for dinner every night for a year at a time.
Wait, you wrestled too?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So, well, with Riley, he was really overweight when he was little. So when he had to cut weight, we all did it as a family so that he wasn't doing it alone. So if he was eating grapefruit for dinner, we were all eating grapefruit for dinner. And so it was seriously every single night for, I want to say 6 months, we had half a grapefruit, a hard-boiled egg, and maybe a couple saltine crackers. And then we'd have a 5-hour wrestling practice because we had a 2-hour practice. But as soon as we got out of school, he'd pick us up and we'd go run around the town or do a HIIT training session or do some extreme militant exercise routine. Yeah, so
torturous.
We were really in shape. But when Riley got into high school and he was wrestling, he had cut from 138 pounds to 106 in less than 3 months. And he did that by not eating. And so there was, he was working out like crazy. He was going to practice. He was going to school, going to practice, working out after practice, and pretty much not eating. And it got to the point right before state where he was having a really hard time maintaining that 106-pound weight. And they had 1 week off and he was 2 pounds over. And he was like, oh, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this. We don't even have practice this week. I have to get in shape for next week or lose the weight. And so he's sitting in front of the fridge, chewing a handful of blueberries and spitting them out in the trash. I was like, dude, you need to eat. Like, this is not okay.
He wouldn't listen to me,
no, and
but he'd listen to Roice.
The weekend before was regionals, And he was so malnourished at that point. He was, every time he like stood up or anything, his nose would just start bleeding. He was like nearly fainting because he was just didn't have anything in him. And I was like, Riley, there are better ways to do this. You need to eat. And so that was really, I mean, I had been really interested in nutrition for years because it was like constantly trying to figure out, you know, is whole milk better? It was, I don't know, should you have fat? Should you not have fat? Should you do this? Should you do that? And I always found it really interesting, but also really frustrating because there's so much science that supports every different thing. And it was like,
Yep.
well, the science supports this and this, so which one should you do? So I wanted to be a dietitian. And then I actually, my senior year, my whole senior project was talking to dietitians and figuring out if that was really what I wanted to do. And they were like, you know what you want to do, you're not going to be happy doing this. You're working with a lot of people who don't actually want your help. They're just kind of forced by their doctor to get your help. And so I wanted to find a more hands-on way where I wasn't just like giving someone a diet and pushing them on the way, but I was actually involved in the process where I could actually help them do both the mindset piece, the nutrition piece, the exercise piece, and kind of tie it all together. So yeah, that's how I got into the coaching.
That's great.
That was
That's
a
great.
horror
It's, you know, it's an important piece of the puzzle. I remember, Jim, man, I remember sucking that weight. You'd be like 10 pounds over the night prior, and oh my God, the
Yep.
crap you would do was just ridiculous.
Yep.
And then I
Throw
remember getting out of the
plastics on and
military and
go.
doing these like bodybuilding shows. And I mean, obviously the diet, you're eating like a bird, but it really teaches you about that, you know, like macro alignment, and you can lose a crap load of weight, still taking in a good amount of calories per day.
It
So
took us
that's
for-
awesome, Royce, to have someone like you now.
It took us forever to get that into Riley's head. And he wouldn't listen to me at all about it. He'd listen to Roice a little bit, but we had an MMA fighter come to a local MMA gym here. He told Riley the same thing. I've been preaching to him for 3 years
Wow.
about, you got to eat, you got to eat, you got to eat.
And he came home and started
And then he
eating.
started eating, and the weight was coming off easier
Yeah.
when he was eating because he had more energy in it. So he just didn't want to listen to Dad.
No, of course not. I mean, sometimes it's kind of like what you brought up with your compassionate stories that you were hearing from other people about him. It's like, yeah, that you're never going to see that within, you know, your core, within your family, but it's the same stuff. People will listen to the outside. They're more receptive to it. It's
One of my
it's
favorite
really funny.
stories was that for Christmas one year, our house burnt down and we're rebuilding it. And so we had like, you know, bankers and insurance people and neighbors and all these people that were really helping us try and get back on track. So my sister and I, and Riley was supposed to be helping, but he was not helping. We were baking cookies and pretzels and chocolate dipped strawberries and all sorts of things. And he was supposed to be there helping, but he was playing video games and having his fun by himself. And so we had like 12 trays of cookies and stuff to deliver. And the next morning we woke up and one of the trays that we had set out to deliver, there was one cookie left on it. And Cheyenne and I were pissed off and we're yelling at him, Riley, where are the cookies? So, I don't know what happened to him. I was like, you're the only other person in this house. Where are the cookies? So he had bagged them all up and taken them to a friend's house to give to Christmas. And he claimed credit for baking all of the cookies. And, oh yeah, I made these for you. You know, I wanted you to have a good Christmas. We found this story out after. But she was having a really tough time and wasn't really in the Christmas spirit. And so he thought he'd cheer her up by taking all of our cookies and delivering them to her. So that was the kind of stuff he did frequently, where it didn't really matter what we had going on. He was looking for someone else to help, and this person will benefit more. So I'm just gonna do what I need to do to help them out. But it was, I don't know how to say this. It was, he never necessarily put himself out to help someone else. He found other ways. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome, Jim. So let's touch on your book and what got you into poems. I saw someone comment on your Facebook the other day. You don't look like the poem writer, or you wrote it. So you were in the bar with someone. Yeah.
I actually started in 7th grade. I wrote a poem for extra credit. Love my English teacher. And it was about bubble gum, the dumbest thing I ever wrote. But the comments that she made, and she commented on my rhyming ability, and I can't remember exactly what she said, but it made me so happy and feel so good. It's like, oh, I can do this. So I started writing in about 7th grade and, you know, dabbled with it through high school. Actually wrote quite a bit in high school. and just continued through college. And it's always been a really good release for me, a therapeutic, you know, life sucks sometimes. So you got to purge all that crap. And it was easy for me to attach my emotions to throwing words on a piece of paper. And I had a Justin cowboy boot box completely full of all the poems I had ever written. Everybody kept telling me, save them, save them, save them. You got to back these up. You got to do something with them. I never did. I just left them in the box. And then when our cabin burned down, everything I'd ever written burned down with it. So September 18th, 2018, I made the decision that, all right, I'm going to start writing again. I'm going to write a poem every day just to get back into this. And since then, I've probably written over 3,000 poems.
It's unreal.
And I this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. And Riley was actually a huge inspiration in this, and, you know, prodding me all the time. Dad, you going to get it done? You're going to do a book? And I had been talking to him prior to his deployment. It's like, I'm finally going to get this done. I've got enough poems now. I'm going to put a book together. And that was one of our fun conversations before he deployed. And then after things happened in August, it just really kickstarted something in me. I got to get this done. It's now or never. I'm going to do this. And a little nerve-wracking throwing yourself out there like that, and
Sure.
the vulnerability piece. And it's like, oh man. But that's why I post so much on Facebook, because I can get a feedback and a feel
Right.
for, okay, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? And it's been overwhelmingly positive. So yeah, I put a collection together, and
That's awesome.
I actually
Jim,
got,
how can people purchase that?
right now, the easiest way would be find me on Facebook. I'm easy to find, Jim McCollum. And there's a link on my Facebook page to go to bookbaby.com bookstore. And there's a link right on there where you can purchase it. I'm in the process of getting a website and everything set up, but everything's happening a little faster than I was ready for.
Sure.
So yeah, right now my Facebook page is the easiest way to find it. Pretty soon I'll have a
If you
website up
want
and running.
an ebook, it's also on Barnes and Noble and Amazon.
And paperback.
iBook.
Paperback can be pre-ordered on
Amazon.
both.
Yeah.
But if you go to Book Baby, you can
You'll
get it
get one in
within
like
3 to
4
5 days. It's print on demand.
Awesome. So you can get it on paperback and on like Kindle.
Yep. And I've got
Awesome.
2 more, and these are all life and love and loss and pain and hardship. And it's just a wide array of emotions is what this first book is. The next 2 are more male, female versions of the same thing that I'm
Kinda
going
more
to put together.
storytelling.
More storytelling. And I've got another one that's all Riley. I want to do a hardback on it, a hardback book for it, and I want to release that one on August 26th. And it's poems of, there's wrestling poems, there's poems of Riley, there's stories, short stories, pre-military, his life as a Marine, and then post August 26th. That one means the most to me right now. It's heart and soul in that one. Yeah, just
Gotcha.
started crying talking about that one.
No, you're good. You're good. I got you. That's awesome. And that'll be August 26th of 2023
This year.
or 2022. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind.
Yep.
2022.
Yes.
Awesome. That's unreal, man. And whatever we can do to help promote and amplify the book, 100%. Just let us know.
Thank you, sir.
And we're there. Before we close out, when we originally spoke, we brought up the idea, and we were kind of like ping-ponging back and forth, what can we really do to make an impact with, the 13 families to start. And then as we move on, how can we make the largest impact for all of the families of, lost service members? And we came up with the 13 reunion. So right now we're back and forth, coming up with ideas within our own foundation or our board of how we can do this. But we briefly touched on it, and obviously we're going to have to get everyone else, to the extent of what people want to get involved, even if it's 4 or 5, doesn't matter how many people it is, but we want to make that an annual thing. And we want to try and start that this year, which is huge for us and meaningful. And I got to get just face to face with the both of you. And I know Colin and a bunch of other people in the foundation feel the same way. We'll kind of ping pong back and forth, but just for anyone listening, that is the plan moving forward, at least for us. And we'll figure out what the 5 W's are at a later time, but we want to make it really impactful and eventually it can grow. But I think this is important right now. It's just to start with the core, start at the forefront of everyone's mind and where we all started from, our foundation. And just know that moving through the future, we definitely want to be a beacon for the both of you and for any other family that was involved or that you guys talked to or run into over the years, to amplify their stories and to help them in any way possible moving forward.
When we first got to talk to you, it's the stars just aligned. Everything you guys said in that first week, I can't remember what parking lot we were in Idaho Falls. We pulled over. It's like, oh hell no, we're not missing this call. Everything that you guys are wanting to do are things that Roice and I have talked about doing for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And to have that conversation with you guys and to hear the passion and how heartfelt your message is, and that conversation that we had with you it just meshed absolutely perfectly. So
yeah,
we're
been
excited
for years. Like, it started with Riley when he was younger, with all of the stuff he went through. Dad wanted to work with other kids who are in troubled situations and get them out to Wyoming and get them just in nature and fly fishing and hunting and hiking to kind of clear their minds and just help them have like an escape. And that evolved going into military families. And then, when you guys called, it was just so perfect that it was something that we've talked about, and we've looked at property 100 times. There's a really beautiful piece of property on the river with all these cabins, and unfortunately it sold, but we've wanted it for years. And of course, now that we're like, let's do it, the property's gone. It's been for sale for like 7 years. But yeah, we've wanted to do that for so long. And when you guys called, everything you were saying and wanting to do, it was like, this is so perfect. And we were just really excited to have the opportunity to work with you guys. And
so likewise, anything we can do to help and get this off and running for you guys, we're in.
Thank you, man.
I love what you're doing. I love your guys' message. You guys are fantastic. You've been nothing
Appreciate
but
it.
great to us.
Appreciate it.
Excited to see where you go.
No, 100%. That's what it's all about. There's when I remember I got out, and when we were still in the military, way before this new generation got in, Wounded Warrior Project was out. Tunnels to Towers started way before that. Frank Silla's brother was killed. He's an FDNY member. He was killed in the towers and all that. And they've done great stuff, moving out throughout the years. But the one thing that I saw, I don't want to give away all their secrets, but the one thing that I really did see is, number one, is the family members, Gold Star family members and even extended family members. It's kind of like the situation happens, then everyone disbands, which I get around the United States, and then it's kind of over with, but everyone always yearns to get back in that community. And then I kind of saw, the veterans, the same situation happens. There's no entity right now that I know of that's doing reunions and retreats and really trying to bring community back from all eras. And, obviously we're playing the physical, the mental, the spiritual realm. That's part of our programming. But then the service members, I thought to myself, man, when I was a service member, there's a lot of things, because everyone just thinks you're good to go when you're in the service, but there's a lot of things that you're not good to go with. And so we've included them. And I think it's vastly important that community stays tight knit.
Yes.
Regardless of if you're in, out, if you're a family member, whatever. And I saw that. And then I was like, you know what? We're going to have to raise a shit ton of capital. But I was like, I don't give a crap, because we're going to do it. And then once we do it, we're going to be able to run all of these programs on an annual basis and never really have to worry about it, essentially. And really, that's what it's all about. And that's what I envision. And obviously, this all started because of the Abbey Gate incident. And we say that whole friggin' heartedly. That is 1000% the truth. I remember calling Colin, and I called a couple other guys as soon as that happened. And I was like, I don't know what needs to happen, but something needs to be done. You know, so I appreciate it. I mean, we're trying to step up to the plate and answer the call, and hopefully, you know, we can accomplish that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys got anything to add, the floor is yours.
I think we
Good.
got a lot out there
We
today.
touched a lot. We touched on a lot.
Yeah.
This isn't the only time that the world's going to see the McCollums either. You're going to be highlighted, at least within our organization, our foundation. You'll always be highlighted. But you know, thank you so much for coming on. And Riley just sounds like an awesome and an amazing individual and dude. And he's definitely the soldier that, you know, we're Marines like to call them Marines. But, you know, in my eyes, everyone's kind of a soldier, and Riley embodies everything that you could ever imagine in wanting in one of your soldiers, so to speak. So, you know, it's an honor to hear about him and to highlight his story. And I really appreciate the both of you coming on.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Absolutely.